What's a ham radio?
The Cadillac of ham radios.
Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Ham Radio, a Stranger Things podcast. We've got a great episode for you today as usual, but first, we have a little housekeeping to take care of, and I'm going to turn it over to Jasmin to let you know where you can find us on social media and where you can listen to the podcast.
Thanks, Ashley. You can find us on Instagram at Ham Radio Media, all one word, on Twitter at HamThrow, on YouTube at Ham Radio Media, or using our handle Ham Radio 1983. We also have a Discord you can join, which is linked in the description of this episode. If you have a fan theory or question you want to share, you can email us at hamradiomedia@gmail.com. Ashley also has a fanfic on AO3 entitled Stranger Things College, which is also linked in the description. The podcast is available on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and much more. If you like the show, please consider leaving us a rating or review. We have a lot of totally tubular stuff coming up, so be sure to follow us on social media to keep up with the podcast and all of our new content.
Welcome to our 100th episode. That's right, you heard that right, folks. 100 episodes of Ham Radio, a Stranger Things podcast. We are so grateful for all of you who have come on this journey with us. There's so much more to come, including a giveaway. So to celebrate this milestone, we will be organizing a giveaway in the new year. So stay tuned for that. And here's to the next 100 episodes. And so we are back yet again with another part to our script series, in which this is now part 9. But before that, we want to let you know how we did on Spotify Wrapped this year. So, Jasmin, would you like to tell the people our Spotify Wrapped summary?
Yes, it's Spotify Wrapped is always a fun time of year, so we're super excited, and we can't believe this is our 100th episode, and we are just so grateful for all of your support. You make what we do possible, so thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. So for Spotify Wrapped this year, we learned a bunch of cool new things about our listeners. So we learned that 81% of you were new listeners this year, so thank you. We saw a 69% increase in follower growth. And as is to be expected, most of our fans are in their 20s and 30s, but we also did surprisingly well with the 55 plus crowd. So if that's you, thank you. There's a big surprise there, and we are so grateful. Our most played episode was You Almost Deserved It, all about Stancy Part 3. And our Stancy series was our most played this year. So shout out to all of the Stancies for all of the love. You guys really came through for us this year, and we are so grateful. And we'll be back with more Stancy episodes after Season 5 comes out. So stay tuned for that. And our most popular poll this year was, which Steve Harrington look is your favorite? Which, I mean, makes sense. He does have some pretty great looks in the series, and looks like there will be more to come. And we're just so grateful for all of your support.
Yes, we truly are. It's so incredible every year going in and looking at the Spotify Wrapped, and it's always amazing for me to see it because you never really realize, who all is listening to your show and how many stats there are out there and how many categories there are for those stats. And it's just amazing to see how we've grown year after year of doing this podcast. And Jasmin and I, we put a lot of time and work into the show and doing our research for things for this show. And just to see you guys continue to come back and listen to us, and even our new listeners out there, we thank you for joining us on this journey, and we hope you will stay with us in the new year because we have some fun things here on our podcast that we're going to be doing in addition to the Season 5 content. But again, I would just like to say thank you for your continued support for our Spotify listeners.
Yeah, and I'm really hopeful that Apple Podcasts is going to do something like this because used to just have Spotify Wrap for music, and then Apple Podcasts a few years ago came out with like Apple Music like Replay, where it's basically like Spotify Wrap but for Apple Apple Music users. And so I'm honestly surprised with all the downtime everybody had during COVID, like I'm honestly surprised they haven't come out with their own version of like Spotify Wrap, like Replay for podcasts, because it'd be super great to have that data as well, as like Spotify and Apple are the two biggest like platforms on which people listen. So, shout out if you use something else, that's awesome too. But it would just be so cool to have like more data, you know what I mean? To have data about all the people that listen to us. We're missing a big chunk there. So I'm hopeful that at some point they're going to come out with that, because that would be super cool to have both, you know?
Absolutely. Apple, what are you doing?
Get on it. And so to follow that up, we had some bonus content in November. On Tuesday, November 27th, the broadcast channel shared a photo of a crew member holding a Demogorgon head on a stick at the hospital set. So it looks like Demogorgons will be attacking the hospital and our heroes once again in season 5. This really feels like a callback to season 3. So we're all looking forward to seeing that sequence, and it seems to be a theme of season 5 so far, that they're picking really pivotal either scenes or locations from the previous like first 3 seasons and coming back to those things and kind of doing like an homage to them, or kind of a callback, or kind of like an updated version. So I think that's going to be really cool to see. And then recently we also got some photos of Nail Fisher and Jay Connolly playing with the Stranger Things Polly Pockets. That was really cute. And that's all of the November and December bonus content that we've gotten recently. They are reportedly filming the series finale, rather, as we speak. So we're unlikely to get a ton of content between now and then, but you never know. We always say that, and then suddenly a whole bunch of content will drop. So it might be quiet, might get a ton of stuff all of a sudden. We just don't know.
Exactly. And nothing would please or surprise me more to wake up on New Year's Day, or even at 12 midnight on New Year's Day, and have some Stranger Things 5, a Stranger Things 5 teaser or something like that. I don't know if that will actually happen, but I know a lot of people out there have speculated that perhaps we might get something later this month, because apparently Netflix will be live streaming some NFL football games, and they kind of believe that Stranger Things might do it during that. I don't really know if that's going to happen. It would be cool if it did. It definitely would attract people, I think, to probably watch those games. But I don't know. I felt like their big chance, or big time rather, to give us anything before the end of 2024 was Stranger Things Day, and they did not do that. And so they're filming the series finale right now, and so I don't know if really don't know if we're going to get anything by the end of December. But hopefully early in the new year. We'll have to hurry up and wait, as they say, which can be frustrating. But look, we've waited 3 years almost now. I think we can wait a few more months for something.
You know what just occurred to me? We didn't get to Dumb this year. Like, we got Geek Week, we got Stranger Things Day, but they normally do like a separate event for like to Dumb or to Doom, however you pronounce it. Like, we didn't get that this year. It's usually in September.
Like, yeah, that's right.
And it's almost Christmas time. If they were going to do it, they would have advertised it by now. So they just skipped to Dumb this year?
Yeah, because I remember, didn't Geek Week come out in September?
Yeah, it's Dumb and Geek Week are around the same time, and then you have Stranger Things Day in November. So they just skipped it this year?
Which is crazy.
Apparently?
Yeah, but really, if you kind of really think about it, outside of like maybe a handful of things, Netflix really wasn't cranking big in 2024, in my opinion. I mean, there wasn't there really wasn't that any like big stuff this year, and I mean most of like the big stuff is coming next year, and for whatever reason they just refuse to to give us any real content for that stuff. But yeah,
I mean,
that
you
is
had
weird.
Bridgerton, but I think, I mean, the only thing I can think is Bridgerton, but apart from that, yeah, I mean, I guess the bigger stuff is coming next year, so maybe they wanted to wait until they could actually have the actors talk about it, maybe? Which I'm surprised they, like, during COVID, they did that thing where they just had them do, like, put them on, like, a soundstage and did little quiz things and stuff. Like, they could have done something like that, and as long as they had the main actors, people would have been happy. You know, like they could have done that for Bridgerton and Stranger Things and Wednesday, and like they could have just done that. They had, they had the ability to do that, so I just think it's weird that they didn't do something.
Yeah, it is weird. I wonder if they forgot.
They're so busy trying to crank everything out so it can come out next year. They forgot to do today.
Yeah.
They forgot to put that on the schedule.
It happens.
Some intern somewhere is like, oh my god, we forgot to do Tadum. Someone's doing the year-end wrap-up and they're like, oh my god, we forgot to do Tadum, guys. Oh my god. Oh man. Right now, some intern and some social media person is like quaking in their boots being like, oh my god, we forgot to do this and it's December.
I know. Like, do you think we should still do it, or like
just following up, just circling back on this before the holidays? Hey Martin, have what do you think about the idea? Like what are we doing? Ashley, you had something that you'd thought of about the demobats that you wanted to share with our lovely listeners?
Yes, I did. So I had intended to bring this up when we talked in part 8, but this is something I have been thinking about really since I watched season 4 as it relates to the demobats. Is so, to our knowledge, like the only upside down creatures that we have seen or know of that have come from there or originate there are the Demogorgons and, well, the Demodogs technically, because that's the first stage before Demogorgon, and then the the Mind Flayer, the Particles, whatever you want to call them, and the Vines. So I found it very interesting that, like, oh, there's this new species, demobats, and so it just kind of had me going, okay, well, did Vecna like have any part in creating them, or do they exist in some other plane of the dimension? Because it's not just the demobats, but also, Nancy talks of like when Vecna gave her those visions of all these monsters and this beast with a huge gaping mouth, and even like this was many parts ago of this series. It's actually written in the script, and you can also, if you go back and really listen very closely to this episode when Steve and the teens are in the Upside Down, you can actually hear some roaring in the background. It sounds like very beast-like, and so obviously we've never seen demobats. We've never seen any other creatures other than a Demogorgon and the Particles in the Upside Down. And so it just kind of had me going, like, have they always been there, or are they stuck in another plane of the dimension? Is Vecna somehow responsible for this, or is it just a natural part of the evolution of the Upside Down, which we don't yet know that much about this dimension, other than it's, is pretty much confirmed in season 4, episode 9, that the Upside Down has always been here. So, Jasmin, I just kind of wanted to get your take on it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, my initial thought was that they'd always been there, but we don't see them in season 1, and people spend like a lot of time, like Joyce and Hopper journey all the way through the Upside Down to get to Will. And we don't see any indication of demobats in season 1. So my first thought was that they'd always been there, but in that case, why would they not attack Joyce and Hopper unless Vecna told them not to? I mean, a big question is, how the heck were they able to get that far and bring him back if everyone at the lab was killed? And, anytime somebody else goes down there, apart from when 11 briefly got stuck and then just pushed her way out of into the school, like the minute the rest of the teens get down there in season 4, they are immediately attacked, and you see as they're biking the demobats sitting on the lamp. Or the street lamp, rather. So, I don't know if maybe, I have a few theories. Either they've always been down there, but maybe they're peaceful, maybe they weren't under Vecna's control in season 1, or we don't know how vast the Upside Down is. Maybe they were chilling in a different part of the Upside Down, he hadn't discovered them yet, they weren't under his control. Or it's also possible that they didn't exist in season 1, and that he created them, or hatched them, or that he saw him create the mind flayer. So I don't know, maybe it's something like that. But the mind flayer is made of particles, whereas the demobats seem to be made of similar stuff to the demodogs, the demogorgons. And since we see the little baby ones jumping around when he first gets down there, that implies that they existed already before he got down there. So I guess it depends how vast is the Upside Down, right? Is it just Hawkins, or can we only see Hawkins? If it stretches beyond Hawkins, if it's if it's another plane of existence that mimics our entire world, our big globe, right? If that's the case, the demobats could have been chilling in Argentina for all we know. They could have been somewhere else in their version of our world, and so maybe he just hadn't discovered them yet. So I don't know, I guess it depends on how big the Upside Down really is. And, why Joyce and Hopper were not attacked the way that the lab people were and the teens were, because I know some people have said that's a bit of a continuity error, but it's really not, because it's well, everyone else at the lab was immediately attacked, but not Joyce and Hopper. So I think we have to learn more about the lore of the Upside Down to answer that question, but those were my initial thoughts.
Yeah, and I really love what you said about could they have been from other parts of the globe, right? Because again, we only know of the Upside Down from the Hawkins Upside Down. It very well could be something that stretches globally. We saw it even in season 3 with Russia, that apparently a barrier was there. They just couldn't open it, probably because it wasn't weakened like it was here in Hawkins. But yeah, it really would just, like you said, depend on the lore of the Upside Down. And I know the Duffer Brothers have said that we're going to get those answers to the lore of the Upside Down next season. But it'll be interesting to see how much of it we actually get, because there's only so much you can do in 8 episodes. Right now, my running theory is that Vecna created them somehow. But I think that's why it's so great that we haven't really seen that much of the Upside Down on the show. Really, if you think about it, we've only been inside the Upside Down, as it were, in season 1 and season 4. Seasons 2 and 3, we weren't really there, in the actual Upside Down. Season 2, we had the tunnels, and then season 3, we weren't really there at all, except for that one time when Billy had that vision. But we didn't actually ever go to the Upside Down in season 3, and I feel like a big part of that was on purpose, so that maybe they could go in and expand this place and expand the lore and everything. Because I feel like if they had shown us every season the Upside Down, then and in season 4 you bring up demobats, and it's well, that wasn't a thing in seasons 2 or 3, but I definitely I like that strategy of us not really going there in 2 and 3 because, Vecna, it's very clear that Vecna has been a very, very busy man down there between 1983 and 1986. And so I really like it. And even just the Upside Down in general in season 4 is so vastly different from the one we saw in season 1. And I know part of it is like a budget thing, but also just from a show's perspective, I mean, it does make a lot of sense for it to have, evolved to what it is now because of Vecna and what he's been doing and interactions with the right side up and the upside down and stuff. But it'll be very interesting to see what they do with all that.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like they've left themselves enough wiggle room that they can really explore that in season 5 without it being contradictory, which I think is a good thing. Like, I think they were smart about that. I think they mapped out what to show us, what not to show us about the Upside Down and the lore really well. So I think they did pull that off well. So I'm also very interested, and it would be, like you said, I don't know if we're going to be able to get into all of it in season 5, but it would be cool to see maybe like a companion comic or book, or, sometimes when shows wrap, they'll do like a behind the scenes book or something that's got like photos and, notes and stuff, or maybe something like that, because I don't think they're going to be able to cram all of that into season 5 because, from what we know, we've got the introduction of new characters, we've got somebody going missing, we've got the military presence, we've got presumably fights with Vecna, we've got a lot going on in just a few episodes, so I feel like they won't be able to get into all of it, but I hope we'll be able to get into enough of it that it'll make sense, and, we'll get some of the answers to our questions.
Open-ended very well. I think that's, they did the same with Will. I mean, that definitely has been planned at least from season 2 beyond, to not tell us anything about Will's time in the Upside Down or anything like that, so that they could do that in the final season, because that's really been like one of the biggest burning questions is why was Will taken there, and was it wrong place, wrong time, or was it selective? Things like that. So I think they do a really good job of leaving things open-ended.
Yeah, I agree. And I think starting from season 2, like season 1 was only ever supposed to be just season 1, but I think starting with season 2, you can see the places where they intentionally left it open, or they gave us the impression, and I think they do this really well too, they gave us the impression of something being done or closed off, or this is the truth, and then something I realized with season 4 is actually that might not be true. Some stuff, yes. Other things you're like, oh, it was framed in this way back in season 2, but now it's clear that was, like, they were framing it a certain way to kind of misdirect our attention, and as they come back and revisit those things, you're like, that was a misdirect, or it looked like the matter was closed, and you're like, oh, they actually just framed it that way to misdirect us, so we wouldn't be focusing on it too hard, but then they reopen it and they come back during season 4, you're like, So I think that's something that they do really, really well. But of course, the thing that creates is, well, you have to really stick the landing in 5, because if you've left that much open-ended and you can go anywhere you want with it, you have to really stick it in season 5. Otherwise, it's like, well, that's a little disappointing. But I think they will. I think they've shown that they clearly mapped out, I think, the lore and the Upside Down side of it. And like you said, not showing us Will's time there. They really left that open-ended enough. Starting with season 2, you can tell that there was a plan there. So I'm personally excited to learn the truth about a lot of that stuff.
Me too. So now we move into the script portion of today's episode, and we're going to pick up right where we left off. So Henry, or one, whatever you want to call him, at this point, shoving 11 into the broom closet and then telling her to wait. And then we cut back to Eddie's trailer, and the kids are trying to help the teens get out of the upside down. And in one of my personal favorite scenes, and probably one of the coolest shot scenes in the show, with the rope. Jasmin, do you want to go through your thoughts on this scene?
Yeah, I also really love this scene. I think it's the perfect mix of like kind of trippy and cool and supernatural, but also really funny. It feels very authentic to how like a group of kids and teenagers would approach this. So I think it's both parts like kind of cool and mysterious, but also really funny, which I just really love. Like we talked about this last time, but the acting is just so strong in these scenes. And so, what I noticed right off the bat is the beginning of the scene is the same, but as the scene goes on, it starts to differentiate from the script. I really love the moment with Eddie where him, Steve, and Nancy are all looking at each other, and finally Eddie goes, "Well, I guess I'll go," and that made me like laugh out loud. It's clearly an ad lib from Joseph Quinn the day of, and it's this great moment where they're all waiting to see who goes, and Eddie looks at them and goes, "Okay, well, you two are clearly having a moment, so I guess I'll go." Like, guess I'm third wheeling here. I guess I'll go. Like, I just really love that, and there's so many of those great little moments in this like part of the episode, like as they journey like from the upside down back into the right side up. So I just thought that was hilarious. I noticed that Nancy's fall into the Vecna vision is the same, but Steve shaking her and telling her to stay with him and wake up is not in the script. So again, I've brought this up before, but there's a lot of really good kind of small changes or kind of ad libs that you can tell that Joe Keery and Natalia Dyer worked on with these scenes that just make the final product just like so much stronger, and it really just like pulls you in, and you like really just feel the tension, and trying to create tension in a script, it's about the writing, but it's also about how you play it, and like holding and building that tension really well, or holding the moment. And these actors have just such great chemistry together. You can really feel that. So I just really loved that part. I thought the acting was so strong. And like in the script, the other teens slowly realize something is wrong, but in the final version, it's from Steve's yelling like right away that something is wrong. And I feel like that builds the tension better, because having slowly realize, it's not quite holding the tension in quite the same way. So I think there's a lot of changes from script to screen. We can tell make the tension in these scenes work a lot better. And like credit to the actors on that one, because that's so much about the performance. I also noticed that Barb looks a bit different here than in season 1, like when Nancy's in the vision and she's in the pool. I think that's because we don't really get a good look at her when Eleven, Joyce, and Hopper see her, but we really get a good look at her here. Like she's quite slimy and decomposed when we see her in season 1, and it's very quick. Whereas this is a much longer shot where they like pan in and you can really see her. And I'm sure that was done to, just the shock value to kind of like drive it home. And in the script, all you hear is Vecna's voice as Nancy realizes she's seeing Barb's dead body, whereas in the final vision of the scene, it's intercut with flashbacks from Barb's death and Steve and Nancy having sex in season 1, which I think is a lot more impactful, because, it gives her reconnecting with Steve more meaning, and as the audience, like, it's very jarring, right? We're cutting back between what we saw in season 1, the vision now, you're feeling Nancy's grief and her horror, and the mixed emotion she's feeling, and it makes the scene just, like, so much stronger and, like, more impactful, whereas I feel like they'd gone with the original version, where all we do is just see Nancy look at Barb's dead body and just hear Vecna's voice. Like, it's kind of spooky, but it doesn't hit you like a gut punch. It's not as impactful as this final version is. So I'm guessing maybe that was a decision they made during editing, and that just makes this whole scene like just so much stronger. And also in the script, Nancy scrambles up the ladder and escapes the pool, but in the final version, she stands frozen in fear in like the middle of it as the blood rushes in. And I really feel like this was the right choice because it's a lot more impactful. And if they'd stuck with the script, that would imply that Barb could have somehow escaped from the pool in season 1, when I think that's pretty clear it's impossible. Like if you go back and watch that scene in season 1, you can see that Barb tries to get out, like she grabs the ladder, but it's slippery, and the Demogorgon, like, the implication that it's like grabbed her from behind somehow. And I think having Nancy escape the pool in the vision would imply that Barb could have done the same thing. And I think that really would have done Barb's death a disservice. Like the reason her death is so impactful is because it's senseless, right? Like she's at the wrong place at the wrong time. She gets grabbed, Nancy can't get to her. And, even if I think that scene is meant to give you the sense of like, even if Nancy had rushed down there, there's nothing she could have done. She's in another dimension. It's over so fast. Barb tries to get out. She can't. It's slippery. It's wet. It's covered with vines. And the Demogorgon is like way bigger than she is. And it's supposed to be a senseless death. It's supposed to be like, there's nothing you could have done. So I think by having Nancy, get out of that, it would have somehow implied that Barb could have too. So a lot of these changes are, they're not like super major changes from script to screen and the way we saw with some other scenes, but I think this final version, from the acting to the editing of this sequence, is just so much more impactful and like moving, and I feel like it really puts you in Nancy's head and like her state of mind, so much more so than the script version, because I feel like the script version, it's like you're an observer, but in the final version on screen, you're like with Nancy in this, like you're like in the moment with her. And I think Natalia Dyer deserves all the awards for this scene because it's so well acted and it's just like so well done.
Yeah, it really is. And fun fact before I go into my thoughts on the scene, and I didn't even know this until I looked it up found it on his website, but Michael Mayer Jr., who is the concept artist for the show, actually directed that scene. He has it on his website of like scenes that he's directed, and he actually directed that scene. But I thought that was pretty cool that the Duffers did not direct that scene. But yeah, it's a very impactful scene of like Nancy in the pool, which I thought was very interesting. First of all, foremost, my biggest question about that was, why does Vecna pull Nancy in? In episode 4, Max accidentally entered his mindscape. He even was like, why are you in here? How did you get in? But he intentionally pulls Nancy in and into his memories. And if he knows who Nancy is and what she's capable of, why would he do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like maybe there's a distinction here that's not quite clear, because my understanding was that like when Max accidentally gets into his mindscape, he doesn't want her in there, right? Like that's his personal like mindscape, where these are memories, like these are his memories. I think it's the difference between the mindscape and a trance. Like I saw what Nancy got pulled into as being more similar to the trances that we see the other Vecna victims get pulled into, like with Fred, right? I saw it as more being like a trance where he's in, I think it's about control. Like I think in a trance or where he's pulling someone into memories or a trance like state, he's in control. Whereas he tried to do that with Max, and then somehow she was able to, it opened a door into his mindscape and she wound up in there. So I think that's a difference, but you're right that that had already happened, right? So like if he knows that that's possible and that's the thing he doesn't want to have happen, why would he intentionally pull Nancy in to memories, into a trance, knowing she could somehow probably break free and get into his mindscape the way that Max did, unless whatever he's doing he feels is so important to take that risk as to do that in, he knows that's a risk he's taking, but it's important enough to do this, because he does a similar thing to Max, right, where he he basically tries to use Billy to manipulate her, and then she runs away and manages to get into the mindscape. He's using Barb's death to taunt her, so there's no reason Nancy couldn't have just made a break for it and, wound up where Max did. So that's a really good question. Like, either he thinks it's important enough, or he's arrogant enough to believe it was a one-time thing. Yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah, and the only other thing I've been able to come up with is maybe because he knows she's a journalist, and like in episode 2 of season 4, when she's talking to Eddie's Uncle Wayne, and she's like, I'm not like those a-holes at the Hawkins paper. I want to tell your side of the story. And maybe Vecna knows that, and he wants Nancy to see it from himself, because according to him, which I don't think we're gonna get to it in this part of the series, but he even asked her, like, how was old blind dumb Victor, implying that he knows that she went there to see him and possibly knows that his dad told her what he believed happened, and maybe he wanted Nancy to, from his perspective, see how it really happened. Maybe I answered my own question there, but that's kind of how I've kind of come to see that, which, I mean, really, if you think about it, if that was his intent, if you really think about it, he didn't really show Nancy anything new that Victor didn't say, other than he just basically told Nancy, yeah, it was me. My dad always believed that it was some demon, but no, it was me. Like, I did all that. So I just want to let you know that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Don't believe him. You should believe me. But again, I don't know why he would want to do that, unless he really is just that arrogant and just thinks, well, it won't really matter anyway, what I'm about to do. But yeah, it's very interesting that, he pulled her in, showed her all this stuff that he did as a child, and some of what happened in the lab, I guess. It's not really clear if he really showed her his part in the massacre or not. But then episode 8, he kind of ends it with, like, I want you to tell 11 that I'm gonna destroy the world, which I don't understand that either. But we're not talking about episode 8 today, but yeah, those are one of my biggest questions that still nags me.
Yeah, it's a good question, because I mean, it's a good theory that, maybe he just wants to tell a side of the story, but if that's his goal, A, don't kill someone's best friend, and B, don't, like, he starts her off with, like, hey, do you remember that time your best friend died? Like, if you want someone to tell your side of the story, I don't know, maybe don't start with that. Like, he could have just pulled her in and then shown his memories. Like, he didn't need to freak her out or scare her with the whole, let me show you Barb's dead body thing. And, like, since we know that Barb's body in reality is in the library, he's basically created a situation that isn't real. But Nancy doesn't know that, and she's so haunted by this, she doesn't tell anybody. Like, we don't see her tell Steve or any of the other characters. So, like, if that's his intention, I don't know why he just didn't, like, go into the memories, like, straight up his memories. Like, he seems to do this intentionally to upset her and freak her out and scare her, but she's already terrified. So, like, that wasn't necessary for him. Like, he appears to just be doing this to mess with her. But, like you said, like, if that's the goal, like, why would you do that? And he's like, tell 11. But he knows that 11 is not in Hawkins, because otherwise he'd be able to reach her. Like, he knows that 11 and Will are not in Hawkins, and he knows they're not in Russia either. Like, he knows they're not there, because he'd be able to reach them if not. And since, like, like you said, like he makes a comment about Victor, he knows what they've been up to. He knows that they're not in Hawkins. And Nancy outright says, like, later on after she gets out, that, like, well, they're in California and nothing can hurt them and they're safe there. So he knows that they are not even in the state. So it's kind of weird that he's like, let me tell my side of the story by scaring the bejesus out of you and making you relive her death, and then also tell you to tell somebody that I know damn well isn't even in this state, and you have no way of contacting. Because, like, Nancy literally says right after, like, they haven't been able to contact them. Dustin makes a comment earlier about how they haven't been able to get through. You know, repeatedly talk about how they can't reach the buyers and they can't reach Mike. So Vecna apparently knows all that, but was like, you know what? I think the best method of communication here is to pull Nancy in to tell my side of the story. Like it is kind of weird if you're going to choose a communication method. Like, that's kind of a weird way to go about it.
Yeah, I know. It's like, hey, look, here's your dead best friend who tragically died while you were getting it on with your boyfriend and all that. And, oh, yeah, by the way, here's my story, and please feel sorry for me. Like, how he thought that was gonna work in his favor, I have no idea. I mean, because the Duffer Brothers wrote both of these episodes, I don't want to say that it was, contradictory or convoluted. I'm sure there's reasons for it and it's important, but yeah, I mean, I don't understand I don't understand his thinking there. I mean, yeah, like you said, if that's all he wanted to do, like all he had to do was just, bring her in to his memories and let it be done. He did not have to go the extra mile to show her Barb's dead body. I mean, really, he didn't even have to bring her into his mindscape to begin with, because it was already scary enough, listening to all the people screaming and things like that. I mean, really, all he had to do was just bring her down straight into the flashback of his family arriving at the Creel house. I mean, that's all he had to do. But no, he could not do that. He had to go that extra step.
Yeah, it's a weird way to go about it if that was indeed the goal. And if that's not the goal, I'm curious as to why he did that. I mean, I guess you could argue he was trying to, like, destabilize her, but that if that was his goal, it didn't work, and that kind of goes against what he would know about Nancy by this point, because, like, I mean, it destabilizes her in the sense of, like, her personal and, like, romantic relationships. Like, it puts her in a bad place there, but in terms of her resolve to, like, take this guy down and stop this from happening, I think it strengthens her resolve, because she's just lost Fred. She's now having to relive Barb's death again. And in response to that, they flambe the guy and she shoots him in the head. So if his goal was to be like, I'm going to destabilize you and that'll get my message across, but, like, throw you off so you don't do anything, that was a severe miscalculation, which would be weird considering that, like, the whole reason Nancy's been on this thing was because of Barb. I mean, like, her, Steve, and Jonathan, again, flambéed a Demogorgon all the way back in season 1. So he knows that Nancy's capable of that. So, like you said, it's weird knowing everything about her he would know by this point. It's weird that he'd be like, aha, yes, this is the right call to get my message across. This will not come back to bite me in any way.
And the only other note I really took about this scene in particular was I love how it's described in the script, but also as you see it on the screen, of them describing in the script that they say, like, it effing hurt, when Nancy lands into the pool. And I just thought it was really cool to see, like, this is not Nancy in her physical body. This is Nancy in her mind. And she, like, it's tangible. Like, she actually did fall and she got hurt when she fell, even though this is supposed to be, like, a memory. So I just thought it was very cool that how they wrote it in like it's a tangible feeling. It's not like you would think being pulled into like your mindscape would be. Like it did hurt when she landed onto the surface of the floor of the pool.
Yeah, that's a good catch. The way they describe that there, like it's tangible. Like that's really cool. That's a good catch. That's really cool the way they describe that there.
So the next scene after Nancy sees Barb's dead body and the pool starts filling with blood, then we go back to Hawkins Labs with 11. She's still in the broom closet, and then the sirens start to blare.
Lots of thoughts on this scene. For starters, I noticed that in the script, 11's movements are panicked and jittery, but in the final version, they're more measured and careful, which makes sense given how 11 was in season 1. I think the script version of her is kind of closer to who we see in season 4, but not super close to how she was in season 1. So I think that was a good call on Millie Bobby Brown's part to make sure she was mimicking the way 11 moved and acted in season 1. 11's walk to the Rainbow Room is pretty much the same. She doesn't start to panic until she sees the bodies of the dead children, which again makes much more sense with what we've seen from 11's journey and the way she, kind of reacts to things up until this point. In the script, Henry kills 4 last, but in the final version it's 2, and in the script his eyes are bleeding, but in the final version that's not the case. But if you look behind her, the other kids, like, their eyes are bleeding, and I believe that's also the case for some of the bodies that she passes. So I feel like that was kind of a good kind of misdirect there, whereas I feel like if his eyes had been bleeding as he killed him, it would have been, like, very obvious as to what was going on there. But I think because they had it, it's kind of quick behind you, it's not something you really focus on. It kind of makes the final reveal and everything a lot more, shocking and terrifying. I also noticed that the way the sequence is shot is different. So the kill sequence is, in the final version, one long shot, not a cutaway like in the script. In the script, it says that one's eyes are closed, but in the final version, they're open. And in the script, 11 is too scared to breathe, and one turns around because he senses her presence. But in the final version, like, he knows that she's there because she's hyperventilating behind him. And I think this probably has to do more with the physicality of the actors. Like, it made sense in their heads, I think, when they wrote this. When they went to film it, they realized that, like, she can't just not be breathing. Like, she can't just be completely silent because 11 has just run down a hallway. And so if you're running, because you're panicked and, like, there's dead kids everywhere, she's breathing heavily, she's starting to hyperventilate, to have suddenly Millie Bobby Brown runs down the hallway and then suddenly hold her breath. You'd pass out if you did that. So I feel like they went to film this and they were like, oh, like, in our heads this sounded cool, but we can't actually have her do that because, like, if she keeps doing that all day long, she's gonna pass out. And it also, like, doesn't make any sense for the scene. I feel like when they were cutting away originally, like, doing multiple cuts, that would have worked. But because they do one long shot where she leaves the broom closet and gets all the way to the Rainbow Room, she's hyperventilating because she just, like, ran a whole mile and, she's terrified, right? So I think the final version makes so much more sense, works so much better, and what really comes across to me is I think Millie Bobby Brown and Jamie Campbell Bower really did a lot of, like, working out the physicality of it in rehearsals. Like, you can tell they must have gone through it and really figured out how they wanted to block it and behave before they went to do, like, the actual shooting. And it really pays off because it's, like, the tension builds, it's a very, like, smooth transition, it builds and builds and builds, and it makes sense with what you're seeing, especially when you add in the cut between her and the younger actress. It's really, really well shot, and you can tell that the actors put a lot of, like, effort into making sure it was smooth and seamless so that, like, the final reveal really works. So I thought that was just, like, some really good acting and, like, blocking in this scene. And then in the script, one slams the doors closed before 11 reaches them, but in the final version, she pulls the doors open, and then he slams them while she's holding them, and I feel like that is just so much more impactful. because in the original version, she's like, oh, doors are closed. Whereas in this one, he basically allows her to get to the doors and open them, and she's halfway through, she's halfway there, and then he forcibly slams them, and it just builds that tension of, oh my god, this guy can do whatever he wants. That's how powerful he is. And I think that fits a lot better with what we see in present day Vecna, because he does that with his other victims and other people he manipulates. He'll let them get all the way to the edge, and then he'll yank them back. And that seems to be like a thing that he enjoys doing to people. So I think that fits so much more with the present day Vecna we see than the original version. And I feel like that must have been something they worked out the day of filming, and that just works so much better. In the script it says, one now begins to walk toward her, slow, methodical. Something about his gait is now eerily familiar. And I think we're supposed to recognize Vecna's walk here, but I don't really think that's achieved. And also in the script it says, but he doesn't seem angry. If anything, he seems confused, perhaps disappointed when he comes over to her. But in the final version, Jamie Campbell Bower's performance comes off as more blank and emotionless than disappointed. And I think this is something that him and Matthew Modine do really well, which is they have this sort of detachment in their performance that's just really chilling and just provides such a contrast to Millie Bobby Brown's 11, who is so empathetic and emotionally driven. And I really think this comes down to performance, because I think, we've talked about this in previous script episodes, but the Brenner and the Vecna of of the script are a lot more sympathetic, and they're a lot more seem to be trying to emotionally connect with 11, where the final product is a lot more detached. And I think that works so much better, because if they were kind of sympathetic, if they were emotionally connecting, I think the final reveals would be a lot more jarring and kind of feel disingenuous. But because they keep this cold, detached air all the way through, apart when they're actively trying to manipulate her, when they're, you can see the difference between the chess game and this. I think it works so much better because it's so much more believable, the final reveal, rather than the scripted way. So I think the actors really deserve credit for giving it the right physicality and the right body language and the right facial expressions. Overall with this scene, the dialogue is the same, but the physicality here is different.
Yeah, and about when he's walking there and they talk about his gait, I think we are, meant to first recognize, okay, this is the same walk as Vecna, but I also think we're supposed to put the connections together of this is how Billy walked when he was flayed, especially in I think it was in chapter 6 of season 3, E Pluribus Unum, when flayed Billy pulls 11 in, and the walk is very, very similar. But the biggest thing I really, took from this scene when he's doing that is I could just imagine present day 11 remembering this event and remembering him doing that and going gosh, this is just with Billy last year. And I just couldn't imagine for her, if this was a moment where she, present day 11, put all the pieces together of well, really not all the pieces together, because we know from episode 9 that when Vecna talks to her, she realizes it was him the entire time. But I feel even so, present day 11 maybe it kind of started going, oh, that looks very familiar. I mean, I don't know if that's for sure because it's not written in the script, but it's one thing, one observation that I made. But another one, the biggest question I really had from this entire page of the script is when 11 is going around, she hears the commotion and everything, and she's checking everything out, and she goes to 10's room and sees Dr. Brenner laying unconscious on the floor, is, what I would love to ask Henry if I had the opportunity is, why did you not kill him too? I mean, if you right now, or if you're Henry Creel and you're on this rampage and you know that Brenner is in a room with a test room with one of the subjects that you killed, why not take him out too? Because that's, I mean, why not do that? And the man who did awful things to you and these kids, like, why leave Brenner alive?
Yeah, it's a good question because I think 11 believes he's dead in that moment as well because, he's lying on the floor and it's only after, he comes in at the end there that she realizes he's not dead. But likewise, I mean, why not kill him and why leave Owens alive? Because, like when the Demogorgons attack the lab in season 2, Owens is injured, but he's not killed. And likewise, again, season 1, Brenner is presumed dead, but he's actually injured and not killed. And which is weird when you consider that the beginning of season 1, like every single person they sent in there just gets like immediately taken out. And so much so that like Brenner is talking to Hopper about it when they break into the lab. So, like, the question becomes, why leave those guys alive? Like, if Brenner's behind this whole thing, without him the program cannot restart. Why leave that guy alive? And Owens took over, so why leave those guys alive? I really hope there's like an in-universe reason, and it's not just because we needed them alive for plot point reasons. Because it's like, why? Unless he believed that Brenner was dead, like maybe in the process of killing the other children, like, he slammed into something and he thought the guy was dead. But you'd think he'd check, and you'd think he'd take him out just to be sure, because he shows no mercy. He doesn't, he makes sure everyone else is like dead. And like we said in the lab, everyone else is killed. We see this happen in season 1 and again in season 2. But Owens is injured. And so, like, because he leaves them alive, they're able to try to restart the program, or Brenner is, in Nevada. They're able to do the Nina Project because of that. So, and the reason, Brenner dies in the end is his own hubris. So, yeah, it's like, and again, when 11 brings it up, he's like, oh, he was known just a mediocre man. And especially when he goes on and on about, framing his father and the whole thing, it's like, why, if that is your goal, why, if you want to take over the world, why kill a bunch of kids with superpowers? And why leave the guy who did this and the person who took over after him alive? Like, why, or your Demogorgons are coming at them in season 1. Just go at him like they did with Bob. Why leave these guys alive? Like, I don't know, the more you think about it, the less sense it makes,
Yeah, I know. And also, Henry even goes on a 10-minute monologue talking about how he despised Martin Brenner, and the one person he did not want to have anything to do with was, Martin Brenner. And it's like, well, you have your opportunity to, take care of this man, and you don't. And not once, but twice, because in season 1, when the Demogorgon attacked Brenner, could have done it then too, but he didn't. But yeah, I really don't, other than like a plot thing, from Henry's perspective, I don't understand that at all.
It's one of life's great mysteries, I guess. I mean, I feel like they're either going to address it in season 5 or they're not. If they don't, we'll never know. I kind of hope they do, though, because like it would be cool if this was somehow part of some master plan. I don't know what that plan is, but it would be cool if there was like an in-universe reason for this that made sense. I really hope there is, and it's not just, we need these guys alive for future plot points. Yeah. I hope we find out.
The only thing I could ever think of is that Henry just wanted Brenner to just suffer from it, knowing that Henry took out all his precious test subjects and really ruined his program. I mean, that's like the only thing that I could really see that he would use as a justification for doing that.
Yeah, that could be. Although, you'd think he'd take it out the second time around, though. Because, okay, that was his justification the first time. You think in season 1, he would have just been like, all right, let's go, take him down. Like, it's, Yeah, I just don't know why he let him live a second time.
Well, he won't have to worry about a third, because Marty B is dead. That we know of. All right. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Just want to let you guys know that this will be our last episode for a while. We are taking a much needed break in December and January. So the next time you'll hear from us will be in February, unless, of course, we get a teaser or a full trailer for season 5 between now and then, so keep your fingers crossed. But we'll still be active on our social media, so you can connect with us there in the meantime, so make sure you are following us if you are not already.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys in the new year. Until then, we want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you all in the new year. And that's our show. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe and tell your friends. Our theme music is provided by Neon Knights. Thank you for listening to this episode of Ham Radio, a Stranger Things podcast. Please join us next time, same dial, same time.
Over and out.